The fork hit my cheek first, then clattered onto the good china with a sound that cut through 20 years of family dinners. My nephew Aidan, all 7 years of righteous indignation, glared at me across Jessica's polished mahogany table like I'd personally ruined his turkey. "Mom says you're the help," he announced to the entire dining room. "That's why you bring the cheap wine and sit at the kids' end." The silence lasted exactly 2 seconds before my brother-in-law Marcus erupted in laughter that shook his considerable belly. Mom followed with those delicate giggles she'd perfected at the country club, and suddenly 14 relatives were all sharing the same inside joke. The one where I was the punchline. "Where are you watching from today? Drop your location in the comments below and hit that like and subscribe button." See, here's the thing about family humiliation. It doesn't happen by accident. Jessica had positioned me at the far corner of her precious table, between her mother-in-law's oxygen tank and the wobbly chair that everyone avoids. The seating arrangement was strategic, designed to reinforce a hierarchy I'd apparently been too stupid to recognize. I looked at Jessica, my own sister, and caught that satisfied smirk she was trying to hide behind her wine glass. She'd taught her son to disrespect me the same way she'd learned to dismiss me over the years. I was Michael Thompson, the brother who fixed her leaky faucets, co-signed her mortgage when Marcus's credit went south, and apparently served as the family's designated charity case. "Michael, honey, don't take it personally," Mum said, dabbing her eyes with her napkin. "Children say the funniest things." The funniest part was that everyone thought it was funny. Uncle Robert slapped the table and wheezed about kids being honest. Marcus made some crack about me bringing $3 Chuck to a Dom Perignon crowd. Jessica just shrugged and told Aidan to finish his potatoes. I stood up slowly, folding my napkin with the kind of precision I'd learned in my 30 years as a Portland fire captain before retiring at 62. "Excuse me, where are you going?" Jessica called out, not bothering to lower her voice. "We haven't even had dessert yet." I didn't answer, walked to the coat closet, grabbed my jacket, and stepped into the crisp November air. Behind me, the warm glow of Jessica's house continued unchanged. Through the windows, I could see the family gathering closer around the table, probably already moving on to the next topic of conversation. My phone buzzed before I reached the car. Jessica's text was shorter than I expected. "Seriously? You left because Aidan made a joke? He's 7. Grow up." Then another. "This is so typical of you. Always making everything about yourself. We were having a nice dinner and you ruined it by storming out. And finally, to know your place, Michael. We're family, but that doesn't mean we're equals. Some of us worked hard to get where we are." I read that last one 3 times. Know your place. The words sat in my chest like a physical weight. She was right, of course. I should know my place. The question was whether my place was where they thought it was. Maybe it was time to remind them exactly who'd been keeping them afloat since Dad died 3 years ago. Friday morning brought the kind of clarity that only comes after sleeping on righteous anger. I'd spent the night in my recliner, phone notifications turned off, thinking about how this whole mess started. It wasn't just Jessica's mortgage that was the problem. It was me 3 years ago, standing at Dad's funeral thinking I could fill his shoes as the family's rock. Turns out, being the family's rock mostly meant being their personal ATM with a heartbeat. The lending started small. Dad had always been the one to help when family hit rough patches. After the funeral, Jessica called crying about Christmas money. "Dad would have helped," she'd sobbed. And like an idiot, I wrote a check for $3,000. Marcus called a month later about van repairs. "Just until insurance comes through," he promised. Another $5,000 gone, 3 years and $47,000 later. Here I was, the family's emotional support bank, complete with terrible credit decisions and daddy issues. I made coffee and opened my laptop. Time to do what Dad never did. Keep track of exactly where the money went. The Portland property tax website showed Jessica's house assessed at $425,000. Zillow estimated current value at $480,000. Their remaining mortgage balance, according to the documents I'd co-signed in 2020, was $298,000. Nice equity for people who'd treated me like hired help. My phone rang. Jessica again. "Michael, I don't know what's gotten into you, but this silent treatment needs to stop. Marcus wants to apologize. I want to apologize. Aidan certainly doesn't understand what happened." "What part are you apologizing for?" I asked. She paused. "Well, I shouldn't have let Aidan throw food. That was inappropriate. And the part where you told your son I'm the help. I never said that exactly. Right. And Marcus never exactly said he'd pay me back either. Funny how words got all slippery when money was involved. What did you say exactly? Another pause, longer this time. Look, I might have mentioned that you help us out sometimes. With money and repairs. He's 7, Michael, he misunderstood. There it was. The non-apology wrapped in plausible deniability. She'd absolutely called me the help in front of her kid, but she'd never admit it directly. Classic Jessica. I need to think about things, I told her. Think about what? We're family. Yeah, I'm starting to understand what that means. I hung up and pulled out the file folder I keep in my home office. 23 years of careful record-keeping. Every loan, every favor, every time they'd called asking for money. The folder was thicker than I remembered. April 2019, $5,000 for Marcus's van repair. August 2019, $15,000 mortgage down payment assistance. December 2020, $3,200 for Christmas and Aiden's medical bills. June 2021, $8,500 for Jessica's root canal and dental work. November 2021, $2,800 for property taxes they'd forgotten to budget for. The list continued through 2022 and 2023. Every emergency, every shortfall, every time their poor planning became my problem. Always with promises to pay me back when things settled down. Things never settled down. They just found new ways to spend money they didn't have. Total loaned over 5 years, $47,300. Total repaid, $2,200. The co-signed mortgage was the real issue, though. I wasn't just a lender. I was legally responsible for their $298,000 debt. If they defaulted, the bank would come after my pension, my savings, my house. That afternoon, I drove to Pioneer Courthouse Square and called David Chen, a lawyer I'd worked with during some fire department contract negotiations. Smart guy, specialized in financial law. Nathan, good to hear from you. What can I do for you? Hypothetically, if someone co-signed a mortgage and wanted to remove themselves from the obligation, what would that look like? In Oregon, the lender would need to approve a release, which only happens if the primary borrowers can qualify for the full loan amount on their own. Otherwise, you're stuck until they refinance or sell. And if they can't qualify on their own, then you have leverage. You could force a sale to protect yourself from liability. Leverage. That word had a nice ring to it. Saturday brought rain and a phone call from Marcus. His voice carried that false heartiness he used when he wanted something. Nathan, buddy. This whole thing with Jessica is getting blown out of proportion. You know how emotional women get around the holidays. Why don't you come over tonight? We'll watch the game, have a few beers, talk it through like men. I'm not emotional, Marcus. I'm just thinking clearly for the first time in years. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm tired of being the family ATM. His laugh sounded forced. Come on, man, we're grateful for everything you've done, you know that. But family helps family, right? That's what we do. Family also shows respect. When's the last time you invited me over when you didn't need money? The question hung in the air like smoke from a bad fire. I could practically hear him calculating, trying to remember a time he'd called just to talk. Look, Nathan, if this is about money, we can set up a payment plan, start paying you back regularly. How much do you think you owe me, Marcus? Another pause. I don't know exactly. Maybe 10, 12 grand? Try 47,000. But Marcus had always been allergic to math when it didn't involve his paint bids. I'll think about your offer, I said and hung up. Sunday afternoon, I was washing my truck when Bob Morrison pulled into my driveway. Bob worked financial investigations for the state of Oregon before he retired. He'd moved in next door 3 years ago, and we'd developed the kind of comfortable friendship that happens between two men who'd spent careers dealing with other people's problems. Rough holiday? He asked, noting my expression. I gave him the short version. Family dinner, humiliation, years of financial abuse disguised as brotherly love. Bob listened without judgment, nodding in places where other people might have made excuses for Jessica and Marcus. Sounds like they've been treating you like a personal bank, he said finally. That's exactly what I am to them. So change the terms. How? Bob leaned against my truck. In financial investigations, we always followed the money. People reveal their true priorities through their spending patterns. Your sister and brother-in-law have prioritized your money over your dignity. Time to reprioritize. He was right. For 5 years I'd been enabling their lifestyle while they treated me like hired help. The helping had to stop, but the bills wouldn't. That evening, I called Patricia Morrison, Bob's daughter, and one of the best estate planning attorneys in Portland. "Uncle Nathan," she said warmly. "We weren't related, but Bob had insisted his friends were family. Dad mentioned you might call. I need to protect my assets from some family complications." "How complex?" I explained the co-signed mortgage, the loans, the pattern of disrespect. Patricia listened like the professional she was, taking notes I could hear through the phone. "Here's what we can do," she said. "Living trust to protect your current assets. Updated will that removes them as beneficiaries, and documentation of all loans that converts them from family gifts to legally enforceable debts. Can we force repayment? If they've been treating you like a bank, then they should be held to banking standards. Interest, payment schedules, collateral. The co-signed mortgage gives us options too, such as demand they refinance to remove you, or you'll exercise your right to force a sale to protect yourself from liability." The word leverage kept coming up in these conversations. I was starting to like it. Monday morning, I drove to Jessica's house unannounced. She answered the door in her bathrobe, coffee mug in hand, clearly not expecting company. "Michael, what are you doing here?" "We need to talk about money." Her expression shifted from surprise to wariness. "What about money?" "The $47,000 you owe me, plus the mortgage I'm liable for." She stepped back. "I don't know what you mean." I pulled a manila folder from under my arm and handed it to her. "Every loan, every payment, every emergency bailout for the last 3 years, documented with dates and amounts." Jessica opened the folder and stared at the first page. I'd organized everything chronologically, with copies of bank transfers, text messages requesting money, and photographs of checks I'd written. 3 years of systematic record-keeping since Dad died. "This is ridiculous. Family doesn't keep score like this." "You're right, family doesn't. But you made it clear on Thursday that we're not equals, so let's treat this like a business relationship." Marcus appeared in the doorway, still in work clothes despite it being 10 a.m. Either his painting schedule was lighter than usual, or he'd been home more often than Jessica admitted. "What's going on?" he asked. "Your wife owes me $47,000 in unpaid loans. You both owe me either a refinance that removes my name from your mortgage, or I'm demanding immediate action to protect my liability." Marcus looked at the folder in Jessica's hands. "Michael, be reasonable. We can't just come up with that kind of money." "Then you have options. Payment plan with interest, like any bank would require. Or I demand you refinance within 90 days to remove my obligation, and if you can't qualify, I'll have grounds to request acceleration of the mortgage due to my financial risk." "You can't force us to sell our house," Jessica said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Actually, as co-signer, if I can demonstrate that my financial liability is at risk due to your inability to manage payments, I have legal options." Patricia Morrison explained Oregon law very clearly. "I'm not threatening to force a sale today, but I am demanding you either pay me back or remove me from financial liability." The look that passed between Jessica and Marcus was worth the entire conversation. They'd never considered that their personal bank might have legal rights. "You're being vindictive," Jessica said, her voice getting shrill. "This is about your damn feelings being hurt over a stupid joke. Watch your language, and this is about $47,000 and a mortgage I never should have co-signed. Your feelings aren't part of the equation." Marcus stepped forward, getting red in the face. "Michael, you can't just show up here making demands like some loan shark. Loan sharks charge 20% interest and break kneecaps. I'm charging 3% and offering payment plans. Trust me, I'm being generous." I turned to leave, then paused. "You have 6 weeks to present me with a repayment plan or a refinance that removes my name. After that, I protect my own interests." Walking back to my truck, I heard their argument start before I reached the sidewalk. Marcus's voice carrying that edge it got when money stress hit, Jessica's getting shrill the way it always did when she couldn't manipulate her way out of a problem. My phone rang before I reached the end of their street. "Jessica, Michael, please don't do this. We're family." "You're right. And family should be able to trust each other. I can't trust you anymore." Because of one comment from a 7-year-old? Because of 3 years of comments from a 38-year-old? Aiden just said out loud what you've been thinking all along. I hung up and drove home feeling lighter than I had since Thursday. The weight of being their safety net was finally shifting to their shoulders. About time. Tuesday brought panic calls. Jessica first thing in the morning, Marcus at lunch, then Jessica again before dinner. All variations of the same theme. Surely we can work this out. Family doesn't do this to family. You're being unreasonable. None of them mentioned the disrespect. None acknowledged the pattern of taking without appreciation. They were entirely focused on the money, which told me everything I needed to know about their priorities. Wednesday afternoon, Bob Morrison knocked on my door with a bottle of bourbon and a knowing smile. "Figured you might need this," he said. "Patricia told me you're restructuring some family relationships." We sat on my back deck despite the November chill. The bourbon was smooth and the conversation was easier. "Hardest part about financial manipulation," Bob said, "is that the victims usually feel guilty when they stop being victims." "I do feel guilty, like I'm abandoning them." "They abandoned you first. They just did it gradually so you wouldn't notice until it was too late." Bob was right. The disrespect had been incremental. Comments about my job, my house, my clothes, my life choices. Always framed as family teasing, but with an edge that had grown sharper over time. I'd ignored it because they needed me. Now I was wondering if they'd ever actually needed my presence or just my checkbook. "Patricia thinks they'll try to refinance," I said. "Can they qualify?" I'd already run the numbers. Marcus's painting business showed inconsistent income on tax returns. Jessica worked part-time retail. Combined income barely hit $65,000 in a good year. For a $298,000 mortgage, they'd need pristine credit and substantial assets. They had neither. "Not without a co-signer," I said. "Then they'll look for another family member to replace you." That thought hadn't occurred to me. But who would they ask? Mum was on a fixed income. Uncle Robert had his own financial problems. Marcus's family had distanced themselves after too many requests for loans. Thursday morning brought the call I'd been expecting. Jessica. But this time her voice carried a different tone, defeated instead of manipulative. "Michael, we talked to 3 lenders. Nobody will approve a refinance without your income on the application. That's unfortunate. Please don't do this to us. Aiden needs stability. This house is all we have. You should have thought about that before treating me like the help. I'm sorry about that, I really am. I was frustrated about money, and I said things I shouldn't have said." There it was. Finally. An actual acknowledgement of what had happened. Not the full truth, but closer than anything she'd offered before. "What exactly did you say to Aiden about me, Jessica?" A long pause. "I told him that Uncle Michael helps us out sometimes, that he doesn't understand money the way we do, so he's generous with people who are smarter about investments." Translation: I was too stupid to know they were using me. "And that makes me the help how?" "Aiden misunderstood. He's 7. He hears helps out and thinks help, like a job." Still not taking responsibility. Still blaming a 7-year-old for her own words. But it was progress. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "You have 6 weeks to present a payment plan for the $47,000. Minimum $500 per month with interest. If you can't manage that, I'll demand immediate removal from the mortgage or pursue legal options to protect my liability. You can't take our house. I'm not taking anything, King. I'm protecting my retirement from your poor financial decisions." Patricia was very clear about my options. Jessica was quiet for a long time. "I need to talk to Marcus. You have 6 weeks. That night, I made myself a steak dinner and opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving for a special occasion. This felt special enough. The first time in years I'd stood up for myself with my own family. The first time their problems had become their responsibility instead of mine. My phone stayed mercifully quiet. Friday brought an unexpected visitor. Mom's Buick in my driveway at 8 a.m., her face grim behind the windshield. This was the conversation I'd been dreading. "Michael Daniel Thompson, what in the world are you thinking?" She didn't wait for an invitation, just pushed past me into my living room. "Good morning to you too, Mom." "Don't get smart with me. Jessica called me crying last night. Said you're threatening to take her house over some family misunderstanding." I'd expected this. Jessica had always run to Mom when confronted with consequences. The pattern was predictable. Create drama, play victim, recruit allies. "Would you like coffee?" I asked. "I want answers. Since when do you threaten your own sister?" I poured 2 cups and sat across from her at my kitchen table. Mum looked smaller than I remembered, but her indignation was full size. "Jessica owes me $47,000, I said simply. Mum's expression shifted. "What are you talking about?" I retrieved the manila folder and spread the documents across the table. 3 years of financial history laid out in neat chronological order. Mum put on her reading glasses and studied the papers with the attention she used to give my report cards. "This can't be right," she said after several minutes. "Every transaction is documented. Bank transfers, checks, text messages requesting money. Jessica and Marcus have used me as their personal lender for 3 years without paying back a dime." Mum continued reading, her expression growing more troubled with each page. She stopped at one entry and looked up. "Michael, this says you gave them $15,000 in August 2020. That was right after your father's funeral. Jessica said Dad would have helped. She was crying about the mortgage payment. Your father never gave anyone $15,000 at once in his life." That hit me harder than I expected. Mom was right. Dad helped family, but he was careful about it. He'd loan a few hundred here, maybe 1,000 there, and he always expected it back. "I had no idea it was this much," she said finally. "Because they told you family emergencies. Never mentioned that the emergencies happened every few months." She reached the mortgage co-signing documents. "Nathan, why would you put yourself at risk like this?" "Because Jessica said they needed help, because Marcus said it was temporary, because I believed family takes care of family." "Family does take care of family. Then why haven't they taken care of me?" The question hung between us. Mom looked at the numbers again, probably calculating what $47,000 meant to someone living on a fire department pension. "What do you want from them?" she asked finally. "A payment plan, $500 a month with interest, or they refinance to remove my name from their mortgage. And if they can't, then I protect myself from their financial decisions." Mom was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice had lost its edge. "I didn't know they'd been taking advantage of you like this. They probably didn't think of it as taking advantage. Just Nathan being helpful. Nathan not needing respect or appreciation. Nathan knowing his place. Is this about Thanksgiving dinner? This is about 5 years of Thanksgiving dinners." Aiden just said out loud what they've been thinking all along. Mom folded her glasses and looked at me directly. "Your father always said you were too generous for your own good. Dad also said family comes first, but he never said which family members get to define what that means." She nodded slowly. "What can I do to help fix this?" The question surprised me. I'd expected defense of Jessica, justification of their behavior, maybe guilt about my selfishness. Instead, Mom was offering to help. "Talk to them about a payment plan," I said. "Patricia Morrison has the legal documents ready. They can sign a formal loan agreement and start making monthly payments, or they can face the consequences. And if they refuse, then they'll learn that actions have consequences, even family actions." Mom stood and hugged me, something she hadn't done since Dad's funeral 3 years ago. "I'm sorry they treated you poorly, Nathan. Your father would be proud of you for standing up for yourself." After she left, I sat at my kitchen table looking at the scattered documents. For the first time since Thanksgiving, I felt like maybe I wasn't the villain in this story. Saturday morning brought a group intervention. Jessica, Marcus, and Mom's Buick formed a caravan in my driveway. Through my window, I watched them coordinate their approach like a military operation. Marcus carried a manila folder. Jessica held what looked like printed bank statements. Mom brought backup donuts from the grocery store. I let them ring the doorbell twice before opening the door. "Family meeting," Jessica announced, pushing past me with determination she'd learned from Mom. They arranged themselves around my kitchen table with the serious expressions people use for interventions and funeral planning. Marcus opened his folder and spread papers across the surface. "We've been working on a proposal," Jessica said, "a realistic payment plan that works for everyone." I sat down and examined their documents. Bank statements going back 6 months, showing a combined monthly income of $5,200. Expenses listed in neat categories: mortgage, utilities, groceries, gas. At the bottom, a calculation showing available funds for debt repayment. "We can manage $200 per month," Marcus said. "Starting January 1st, I looked at the math. $200 monthly payments on a $47,000 debt would take 19 years to repay without interest. With interest, closer to 25 years, I'd be 78 years old when they finished paying me back." "That's not acceptable," I said. "Nathan, be reasonable," Mom interjected. "They're doing their best." Their best for the last 5 years was taking my money without permission. Their best now is offering to pay me back over 2 decades. I don't think their best is good enough anymore. Jessica's facade of cooperation cracked. What do you want from us? We don't have more money. Marcus's business is slow. My job barely covers groceries. We're trying to do right by you, but you're being impossible. I want what any bank would want. Minimum $500 per month with 3% interest. If you can't manage that, I want collateral. We can't give you $500 a month, Marcus said. Look at our expenses. There's nothing left to cut. I looked at their bank statements more carefully. Car payments on a 2022 Silverado and a 2021 Honda Pilot. Cable television with premium channels. Cell phone plan for 3 lines with unlimited data. Spotify, Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney+. Gym membership for both adults. Weekly restaurant expenses averaging $120. You have $800 a month in luxury expenses, I said, pointing to the items. Cancel the streaming services, downgrade the phones, eat at home, and you're most of the way to $500. Those aren't luxuries, Jessica protested. We need reliable transportation. Aiden needs entertainment. Marcus needs the gym for his back problems. Then you need to choose between your lifestyle and your debt. Mom had been quiet through this exchange, studying the bank statements with the attention she'd once given to balancing her checkbook. Jessica, honey, your father and I raised 4 children on less money than you two make. We didn't have car payments, streaming services, or restaurant meals every week. Times are different now, Mom. Everything costs more, including the money you borrowed from your brother. The room went quiet. Mom's voice carried a finality that ended arguments in my childhood. Apparently, it still worked. I'll co-sign a payment plan for $500 a month, Mom said finally. If they default, I'll make the payments from my savings. Mom, no, I said immediately. Your savings need to last your lifetime. You can't risk them on Jessica's promises. I'm not risking them on her promises. I'm investing them in family peace. Jessica looked relieved. Marcus nodded eagerly. They'd found another family member to exploit, another safety net to catch their poor decisions. That's not happening, I said firmly. Mom, you worked 40 years to save that money. I won't let them put it at risk the same way they put my pension at risk. Nathan, I'm trying to help. Help me by letting them face consequences for their choices. I stood up and gathered their papers. Here's my final offer. $500 per month starting December 1st. Or I exercise my right as co-signer to force a sale of the house. No other family members get dragged into this. No more safety nets. They created this problem. They solve it. You're destroying our family, Jessica said. I'm protecting what's left of it. Sunday brought silence from Jessica's side of the family, but activity from unexpected quarters. Bob Morrison knocked on my door with his morning coffee and a satisfied expression. Heard through the neighborhood grapevine that your sister and brother-in-law were asking around about private lenders yesterday, he said. Asking who? My retired banker friend, Tom Walsh. The Hughes family down the street. Even approached that real estate investor, Kevin Price. I wasn't surprised they were looking for alternatives to my payment demands. Desperate people make desperate choices, but the fact that they were asking neighbors meant their options were running thin. Any takers? Tom said no immediately when he heard the numbers involved. Hughes family doesn't have that kind of cash. Kevin Price, Bob smiled. Kevin offered to buy the house at 60% of market value. Jessica's house was worth roughly $480,000. 60% would be $288,000, barely enough to cover their existing mortgage. They'd walk away with nothing, homeless but debt-free. Betting that scared them. Betting it gave them perspective on your offer. Bob was right. 500 monthly payments probably looked generous compared to Kevin Price's lowball proposition. Sometimes people need to see how bad things can get before they appreciate how good they have it. Monday morning I got the call I'd been expecting. Nathan, it's Patricia Morrison. I have Jessica and Marcus in my office. They're ready to sign the formal loan agreement. $500 a month? Starting December 1st. 3% annual interest. Your house as collateral if they default. My house? Kidding. Their house. If they miss payments, you have the option to force a sale to recover your money. This was it. The moment when years of family dysfunction became business contract. Part of me felt sad about the necessity, but the larger part felt relieved. Clear expectations, legal consequences, no more emotional manipulation. I'll be there in an hour. Patricia's office overlooked the Willette River, professional and calming. Jessica and Marcus sat across from her desk, looking like students in the principal's office. Both had signed multiple copies of documents I couldn't see from the doorway. "Nathan," Jessica said when I entered, "I want you to know this wasn't easy for us. Paying back money you borrowed shouldn't be easy, it should be automatic." Marcus shifted in his chair. "We're committed to the $500 a month, but if Marcus's business picks up, we might be able to pay extra sometimes." Sometimes was a word I'd learned to distrust from them. It usually meant never. But the legal documents would protect me regardless of their good intentions. Patricia walked through the contract terms. Monthly payments due by the 5th of each month, late fees after 10 days, default after 60 days without payment. Clear language about my rights as creditor, their obligations as debtors. I signed my name with the satisfaction of someone who'd finally learned to protect himself. Jessica and Marcus signed with the resignation of people who'd run out of other options. "First payment due December 5th, Patricia reminded them as we prepared to leave. Walking to the parking garage, Marcus attempted one last conversation. "Nathan, I hope this doesn't change things between us permanently. When this debt is paid off, maybe we can go back to being family again." "We'll always be family, Marcus. But the relationship has changed. You can't unbreak trust. You can only build new trust on different terms." Jessica was crying by her car. Not the manipulative tears she'd used during our negotiations, but genuine grief for what we'd lost. Part of me wanted to comfort her, to say everything would be fine. But everything wouldn't be fine. Some damages are permanent. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I'm sorry we took you for granted. I'm sorry too. Sorry it took this long for me to stand up for myself." December brought routine. The 5th of each month, Jessica would transfer $500 to my account. No phone calls, no drama, no family conversations, just business transactions between creditor and debtors. It also brought unexpected developments. My neighbor, Sarah Kellerman, had been working in her garden when Jessica and Marcus came to my house for the family meeting. She'd overheard enough of the conversation to understand the situation, and apparently she'd been talking to other neighbors. "Nathan, I owe you an apology," she said when she caught me checking my mail. "I always thought you were the lucky one in your family. Jessica with her nice house, Marcus with his business. You just the retired firefighter living alone. Most people think that. Most people don't see the bank statements. I went through something similar with my ex-husband's family. 20 years of being the family ATM before I learned to say no. Sarah was divorced, 3 years older than me, worked as a nurse before retiring. We'd exchanged pleasantries for the 5 years she'd lived in the neighborhood, but never really talked. Shared experiences were making her more interesting. How did you handle it? Cut them off completely. Let my ex-husband handle his own family's emergencies. It was hard at first, then liberating. We talked for an hour standing beside her mailbox. Easy conversation about boundaries, family dynamics, the challenge of being generous people dealing with users. Sarah had a laugh that suggested she'd learned not to take herself too seriously. "Would you like to have coffee sometime?" I asked. "Away from the mailbox." "I'd like that very much." Our first coffee date was Tuesday afternoon at a place downtown. Sarah told me about her nursing career, her 2 grown daughters in California, her ex-husband's family's reaction when she stopped subsidizing their lifestyle. "They called me selfish," she said. "Said I was destroying family relationships over money. Same thing Jessica said to me. It's never about the money. It's about respect. People who use others financially don't respect them as equals." Sarah understood in a way that friends and family members hadn't. She'd lived the experience of being valued for her checkbook rather than her character. "Are you dating anyone?" she asked directly. "Not for 3 years. You?" Same timeline. Took me that long to trust my own judgment about people again. I liked her honesty. No games, no manipulation, no hidden agendas. Just 2 adults being direct about their interest. "Would you like to have dinner this weekend?" "I'd like that very much." Friday evening, Sarah picked the restaurant and insisted on splitting the bill. Another sign of someone who understood healthy boundaries. We talked until the staff started cleaning tables around us. "This was nice," she said as I walked her to her car. "It was. Can I call you tomorrow?" "You'd better." That night I sat on my deck with a beer and thought about the year's changes. Jessica and Marcus were learning to live within their means. Mom had stopped calling me to mediate family disputes. I was dating someone who respected me enough to pay for her own dinner. For the first time since Dad died, I felt like my life was moving forward instead of just maintaining stability for other people. Christmas Eve brought snow and a knock on my door that I didn't expect. Jessica stood on my porch holding a wrapped package, nervous in a way I hadn't seen since we were kids. "I know we're not really talking," she said, "but I wanted to give you this before Christmas." Inside was a framed photo from our childhood, the two of us building a snowman in Mum's backyard, probably 35 years ago. We looked happy together, genuinely connected in a way that seemed foreign now. "I found it when I was cleaning out the attic," Jessica said. "I wanted you to know that I remember when we were close, before everything got complicated. I remember too. I've been thinking about what you said, about respect, about taking you for granted." She paused, choosing words carefully. "I think you're right. I think somewhere along the way I started seeing you as a resource instead of a brother." This was the conversation we should have had months ago. The honest acknowledgement without excuses or blame shifting. "When did that change happen?" I asked. "Probably when Dad died. You stepped in to help with his estate, handled all the paperwork, managed the funeral arrangements. You made everything easier for the rest of us. I think I started expecting that from you. The guy who fixes things, who handles problems, who makes difficulties go away." She was crying now, but quietly. "I taught Aiden to see you that way too, as someone who exists to help us, rather than someone we have a relationship with." "And calling me the help?" "I was frustrated about money. Marcus's business was slow, Christmas was coming, bills were piling up. When you showed up to dinner, all I could think about was how easy your life seemed compared to ours. Steady pension, paid-off house, no kids to support. I resented that. So you took it out on me. I took it out on myself, made myself feel better about needing help, by convincing myself you didn't really deserve what you had." This was the truth I'd been waiting for. Not excuses or justifications, but actual understanding of what had happened and why. "The payment plan is working," she said. "We've cut expenses, picked up extra work. Marcus got a contract for 3 houses in January. We're going to be okay." "I'm glad. I was wondering if maybe we could have lunch sometime, just to talk, not about money or family drama, just to see if there's anything left worth rebuilding." I looked at her standing in my doorway, snow collecting on her shoulders, holding the ghost of our childhood. She looked different from the woman who'd orchestrated my humiliation 3 months ago. Smaller, less certain, more human. "I'd like that," I said. "Really?" "Really. But Jessica, things can't go back to how they were. The relationship needs to be different." "I know, I understand." After she left, I called Sarah and told her about the conversation. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Hopeful, cautious, maybe a little proud of her for finally being honest. And proud of yourself for setting boundaries that forced the honesty." Sarah was right. The contract, the payment plan, the legal consequences had created space for a real conversation. Sometimes people need to face costs before they value what they're risking. New Year's Eve, Sarah and I went to dinner at the same restaurant where we'd had our first date. The server remembered us, brought our favorite wine without being asked. We talked about plans for the year ahead, trips we wanted to take, changes we wanted to make. "Any regrets about how you handled things with Jessica?" Sarah asked. I thought about it. I regret that it took so long. I regret that I let them treat me poorly for years before I stood up for myself. But no regrets about standing up? None. Best decision I've made in years. At midnight, Sarah kissed me in the restaurant parking lot while snow fell around us. "Happy New Year, Nathan. Happy New Year." Driving home, I thought about the changes 12 months had brought. A sister who was learning to respect me, a brother-in-law who was learning to pay his debts, a mother who understood that love doesn't require financial martyrdom, a woman who valued me for who I was rather than what I could provide. The fork that hit my shoulder last Thanksgiving had knocked loose years of accumulated resentment and suppressed anger. Sometimes you need to be jolted awake to realize how much you've been sleepwalking through your own life. I'd learned my place all right. My place was wherever I decided to stand up for myself. And I was standing taller than ever. Jessica made every payment on time. The debt would be paid off in 7 years, 8 months. But the respect I'd demanded had already been paid in full. That was the real victory. Not the money, not the apology, not the family peace. The victory was learning that my place in the world was exactly where I chose to make it. And I chose to make it somewhere I was valued, respected, and treated like family should treat family. It had taken 62 years to learn that lesson. Better late than never.